Hiya friends, Prepared Suburbanite here. What's on tap for today? And now that we finally got a break in the really hot, humid, steamy weather of summer, we finally got a taste of fall weather. It's September 5th, it's a little bit cooler and a whole lot less humid today, so it's time to get some work done in our garden. We're going to rip out the old summer garden and get ready for our fall planting. So stick around, I'll share some thoughts and some tips. So here we go. This season's harvest was absolutely terrible, all things considered. We planted everything at about the same time we always plant stuff, and back then it was so cold that the plants just never really seemed to get started. We generally start harvesting tomatoes right after the 4th of July, maybe the middle of July, somewhere around there. We didn't get our first batch of ripe tomatoes off these vines until way at the end of July. And I think it was because the original start of the season was basically all goofed up with lousy, rotten weather. It was so cold, and now it's been so blasted hot all summer long that the plants have been horribly affected by it. There's a lot of dead stuff out there. The final round of tomatoes never really ripened to the way they should have, and we were pretty much disappointed. Last year we did over 50 quarts of tomatoes and tomato sauce and salsa. This year I think we're going to be lucky to do 25 quarts of tomatoes. We did maybe 4 pints of salsa, and that was pretty much it from the tomatoes. Same number of plants that we normally do. Not quite sure exactly all the reasons behind it, but I'm going to blame quite a lot of it on the early season weather. So after we've picked the remaining few sort of ripe tomatoes that we're going to do something with, we'll probably can up the last couple, 3 quarts over the weekend. But what I normally do when I start tearing down the garden is I use a pair of clippers like this, and we put everything in these cages. We've got some store-bought cages, and we've got some homemade cages out of the concrete mesh that we kind of inherited with the property when we bought it here. And I'd like to thank the previous owners for leaving them behind, because they have come in handy for the last bunch of years that we've been using the tomatoes. But what I generally do is, just after we pick what's left, is just start snipping the overhangs, pulling the dead stalks out, throwing them in the dump trailer, taking it down to the into the woods and dumping it down there, so that some of the animals may get some benefit out of it, but it kind of keeps it out of our hair if we take it down deep into the woods. So here we go, gonna start right now. Well, there it is. It's all done, all put away. All the weeds have been in the tomato plants and pepper plants have all been trashed out into the woods, and they're out there decomposing right now. So that's pretty much it for the garden for this year. We're going to be putting in our winter garden in a couple of weeks or so. So altogether, that took about an hour and 20 minutes from start to finish, pulling up probably 20 or 22 maybe tomato plants, maybe 25 and a couple of pepper plants. So from start to finish took about an hour and a half. The investment that I think we've got in our annual garden starts generally in February with planting the seedlings, getting the seedlings all ready, getting them under grow lights and letting them germinate and do all their thing in the house where it's temperature controlled and nice for them. And it's got we've got a couple of grow lights that we set over the top of them, and we rotate them around to keep them watered. And then as they get 6, 8, 9 inches tall, we and the weather starts cooperating a little bit, we'll bring them out and harden them. And what we mean by hardening is exposing them to the wind and all that, so that the stems can toughen up and be able to hold the weight of the plant. So we'll do that for probably a couple, 3 weeks, starting in towards the end of March or so and into April. So they're getting hardened. They'll grow from that 6 to 9 inch range on up to being a foot and a half even, some of them. And then once we get past our first frost date, which is generally around April 10th to 15th in this zone, we're in Wake County, North Carolina. So we'll get them planted. And like I said earlier, we ended up with a bit of a cold spell right after we did the planting. And I think it really slowed things down quite a bit. We generally get out of that particular investment in time, we generally get 50 quarts or so, plus a few pints of salsa and this and that. This year I think we're going to be lucky to get 25 quarts, and we did get maybe a quart and a half or so of salsa put up, but that was about it. So I was kind of disappointed in it. But one of the things that kind of came to light was to destroy all that took about an hour and a half. To build it, to get it all ready, to plant it, to plant things, watch them grow, harden them, get them planted, keep it weeded, keep it watered all summer long, picking the fruit off the vines, doing all the work to put up the tomatoes. I can't tell you how many hours of time, and we love it. I mean, it's not like it's a job or anything, but we do really enjoy it. So, and if we didn't, we wouldn't be doing it. It's kind of one of the finer things in life that we really do enjoy doing it. But it occurred to me how quickly it all came to an end. In an hour and a half, it was all done. And I see a parallel to all the stuff that's going on in Portland and Seattle and Oakland and New York City and all these places that are experiencing all these, they used to be protests, but it's gone far beyond that. How quickly the wanton destruction can ruin buildings and houses and companies and livelihoods and lives. How quickly it all gets torn down. And it's really heartbreaking for me to flick on the news and see that today, I think somebody said that it's been 100 days in a row that there have been violent protests in Portland, Oregon. That's just heartbreaking. That's not the America that I remember growing up in. It just, yeah, we had our problems back in 1968, the riots in Chicago and the stuff that happened in Los Angeles, but it never lasted like it's lasting now, and it wasn't as organized as it is today. And I am just befuddled by the whole thing. And because we're in an election year, it becomes a very critical, strategic kind of a thing. I believe that there are certain factions in the political race right now that are hoping and wanting to have these protests, these riots, the wanton destruction, the fires, the looting. They want it to continue right up through the election day in November, because they think it's going to send a message to a group of voters who look at it and say, yeah, we need a big change. Well, if you think about it, you're going to get a big change one way or the other. You've got to be prepared. I suspect that come November, whatever the election results are going to be contested one way or the other. Whoever ends up on that early morning of November 4th gets the Electoral College vote, but they're not going to be calling the vote right away because of the tremendous number, the millions of mail-in type ballots, absentee ballots, and in certain states just wholesale mailing ballots to anybody that is on the registry or that owns a piece of property or whose name is on a register somewhere. It's just the security for the vote, I think, is pretty much out the window. So I suspect that we're going to end up in a contested kind of a situation, in whichever way it goes, there will be continued violence, there will be continued wanton destruction, and if you're not ready, if you're not prepared, and you don't have enough food, water, and shelter, and a means of self-defense, you're going to be hurting. So I urge all of you to invest now to make sure that you and your family are going to be safe and secure. This is the Prepared Suburbanite, reminding you to be prepared always, and I'll see you all on the next video.